The unexpected invasion. The morning sun painted golden streaks across the playground of Lincoln Elementary School when everything changed forever. Maya Chen, a curious 8-year-old with pigtails and scraped knees, was the first human to see them. She had been hunting for interesting rocks behind the old oak tree when something metallic glinted in the bushes. What she found would shake the very foundation of human civilization. The object was no bigger than a baseball, but its surface rippled like liquid mercury. Strange symbols pulsed with blue light across its curved shell. Maya reached out with the fearless curiosity that only children possess, her small fingers brushing against the alien device. Suddenly, the air around her shimmered. 3 figures materialized from thin air, their forms barely visible like heat waves on summer asphalt. They stood nearly 7 feet tall, with elongated limbs and faces hidden behind translucent masks. Their technology was so advanced that they had been invisible to every satellite radar system and military installation on Earth. But they hadn't counted on an 8-year-old girl who collected shiny rocks. The creatures spoke in clicking sounds that hurt Maya's ears, but somehow she understood their meaning. They were scouts from the Zenthari Empire, an ancient alien civilization that had conquered thousands of worlds. Earth was next on their list, and these 3 were gathering intelligence before the main invasion fleet arrived. Maya did what any sensible child would do. She ran, her sneakers pounded against the playground asphalt as she raced toward her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez. Behind her, the aliens moved with fluid grace, easily keeping pace despite her head start. Their technology could bend light, manipulate matter, and process information faster than any human computer. But they had made one critical error. They had underestimated the power of a child's voice. Maya burst through the classroom door, her face flushed and eyes wide with terror and excitement. The class of 30 children looked up from their math worksheets as she gasped out her incredible story. Mrs. Rodriguez knelt down, ready to calm what she assumed was an overactive imagination. That's when the aliens appeared in the doorway. The classroom erupted in screams, but not the kind the Zenthari expected. These weren't cries of submission or defeat. They were battle cries of pure human defiance. 8-year-old Tommy Martinez grabbed his ruler like a sword. Sarah Kim stood on her desk, pointing accusingly at the intruders. Little Ahmed Hassan started throwing erasers with surprising accuracy. The Zenthari scout leader, Commander Vextel, had personally overseen the conquest of 47 worlds. He had seen civilizations crumble at the mere sight of his species. Entire armies had surrendered when faced with their superior technology. But he had never encountered anything like human children. Mrs. Rodriguez moved with the protective instinct of every teacher who had ever lived. She positioned herself between the aliens and her students, her arms spread wide. Her voice carried the authority of someone who had survived 20 years of handling unruly third graders. The aliens tried to activate their fear-inducing technology, a psychological weapon that had never failed them. But children, they discovered, don't respond to fear the same way adults do. Where grown-ups see impossible odds, children see adventure. Where adults see certain defeat, children see the greatest game ever invented. 9-year-old Marcus Williams, who had been labeled as having attention problems by every adult in his life, suddenly found his scattered thoughts focusing like a laser beam. His mind, which jumped from idea to idea too quickly for traditional learning, was perfectly suited for processing the rapid-fire strangeness of an alien encounter. He noticed something the aliens didn't realize. Their technology created a faint, humming sound that matched the frequency of the school's old radiator system. Marcus had been listening to that radiator every day for 2 years, and his unique brain had memorized its exact pitch. While the aliens focused on the shouting children, at the front of the room, Marcus slipped to the back and began adjusting the radiator's valve. The frequency changed, and suddenly the aliens' cloaking technology began to flicker and fail. The Zenthari had conquered worlds with populations in the billions. Their technology could level mountains and boil seas. Their weapons could destroy entire cities with a single blast. But they had never fought an enemy who had just lost their first tooth and still believed in magic. As their advanced systems began to malfunction due to Marcus's accidental discovery, the 3 scouts realized they faced something unprecedented in their species' long history of conquest. Not superior technology or greater numbers, but something far more dangerous: human unpredictability in its purest form. Maya stepped forward again, this time holding her teacher's hand. She looked up at the towering alien commander and asked the question that would echo across the galaxy. "Want to hurt people? Don't you have any friends to play with?" The simplicity of her question, asked without malice or fear, struck the alien commander like a physical blow. In all his centuries of conquest, no one had ever asked him that. The invasion of Earth had begun, but not in the way anyone had expected. The most powerful military force in the galaxy had just encountered their greatest challenge: humanity's children. When adults failed, the emergency sirens wailed across Washington, D.C. as General Patricia Hawkins stormed into the Pentagon's crisis center. Her combat boots echoed against the polished floors as dozens of military officers scrambled around massive screens displaying impossible data. The reports flooding in from around the world made no sense. Children were fighting aliens and somehow winning. "Status report," General Hawkins barked at Colonel James Mitchell, her second-in-command. The decorated war veteran looked pale as he handed her a tablet filled with classified intelligence. "Ma'am, we have confirmed alien contact at over 300 locations worldwide. All initial encounters occurred at schools, playgrounds, or areas with high concentrations of children aged 5 to 12. Colonel Mitchell paused, his voice uncertain. "The strangest part is that adult military responses have been completely ineffective." General Hawkins had led successful operations in 12 different countries. She had stared down enemy forces 10 times larger than her own. But nothing had prepared her for this moment. Across the room, Dr. Elena Vasquez, the world's leading expert in xenobiology, studied the incoming footage with growing amazement. The brilliant scientist had spent her entire career preparing for first contact, writing detailed protocols for diplomatic engagement with alien species. None of her carefully crafted plans had included 8-year-olds defeating advanced extraterrestrial technology with playground equipment. The aliens appear to be scouts from a highly advanced civilization. Dr. Vasquez explained to the assembled officials. "Their technology operates on principles we don't understand. Energy weapons that can level buildings, cloaking systems that fool our best sensors, and communication devices that seem to manipulate reality itself." President Robert Harrison, a man who had successfully navigated international crises and economic disasters, sat at the head of the table looking utterly bewildered. His decades of political experience meant nothing when faced with an enemy that didn't follow any earthly rules of engagement. "What about our military response?" the president asked, though he already dreaded the answer. General Hawkins activated the main screen, showing footage from Fort Bragg. Elite soldiers, armed with the most advanced weapons humanity possessed, stood frozen in place as alien energy fields surrounded them. Their sophisticated targeting systems couldn't lock on to the extraterrestrial scouts. Their armor provided no protection against weapons that could alter molecular structure. "Every conventional military approach has failed," she admitted. "Our satellites can't track them. Our weapons can't hit them. Our communication systems can't even detect their presence until it's too late." But the children's footage told a different story entirely. At Roosevelt Elementary in Chicago, 10-year-old David Park had figured out that the aliens' energy shields weakened when exposed to the sound of children singing. He'd organized his entire third-grade class into an impromptu choir, and their off-key rendition of "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star" had somehow disrupted alien technology worth more than Earth's entire military budget. In London, 8-year-old Amelia Thompson had discovered that the aliens couldn't properly process human laughter. When she started telling knock-knock jokes to her classmates during an alien scout encounter, the extraterrestrial beings began experiencing what could only be described as system crashes. The most remarkable incident occurred in Tokyo, where 7-year-old Hiroshi Tanaka had somehow convinced 3 alien scouts to help him with his art project. The confused extraterrestrials, who had conquered worlds through fear and intimidation, found themselves mixing finger paints and learning about primary colors. Dr. Vasquez pulled up brain, scanned data that made everyone in the room question everything they thought they knew about human development. "Children's neural patterns are fundamentally different from adults," she explained. Their brains operate on frequencies that somehow interfere with alien technology. But it's more than that. He switched to a recording of Maya Chen's continued interaction with the aliens at Lincoln Elementary. The 8-year-old girl was now teaching Commander Vextel how to play hopscotch. The 7-foot-tall alien warrior was carefully hopping on 1 foot across the playground squares. Children approach problems without preconceived notions about what's possible or impossible, Dr. Vasquez continued. They ask questions that don't occur to adult minds. They make connections that trained specialists miss entirely. To Colonel Mitchell received an urgent communication and turned pale. "Ma'am, we have a problem. Our attempts to intervene are actually making things worse." The main screen showed footage from 3 different military bases where adult soldiers had tried to rescue children from alien encounters. In each case, the moment adults arrived with weapons and tactical gear, the aliens' defensive systems activated. What had been peaceful, if bizarre, interactions between children and extraterrestrials immediately escalated into potential combat situations. The aliens' technology responds to perceived threats, Dr. Vasquez realized. Adults with weapons register as hostile. Children with crayons and jump ropes don't trigger their defensive protocols. General Hawkins felt a chill of understanding. "You're saying our military presence is making us more vulnerable, not less?" "Exactly. Every time we respond with force, we confirm the aliens' assumption that humans are a hostile species that needs to be conquered." President Harrison leaned back in his chair, the weight of impossible decisions crushing down on him. He had the most powerful military in human history at his command, but it was worse than useless against this threat. Meanwhile, 12-year-old genius Rebecca Foster sat in her bedroom in Denver, staring at algebra homework while her mind processed everything she had seen on the emergency broadcasts. Rebecca had been solving complex mathematical equations since she was 6 years old, but she had never applied her analytical abilities to something this important. Her parents were downstairs frantically calling relatives and making evacuation plans like every other adult in the world. But Rebecca saw patterns that the greatest military minds were missing. She opened her laptop and began typing furiously, her fingers dancing across the keyboard as she compiled data from every reported alien encounter. Charts and graphs filled her screen, showing correlations that no adult had noticed. The aliens weren't random invaders. They were following a specific pattern, one that prioritized certain locations and avoided others entirely. But most importantly, Rebecca had identified something that could change everything. The aliens weren't just scouts, they were tests. Each encounter was designed to evaluate human responses to determine the best approach for full-scale invasion. The Xanthari Empire wasn't just conquering Earth, they were studying it, and children were providing answers that confused their entire analysis system. Rebecca's data showed that in every location where children had responded with curiosity instead of fear, alien behavior patterns deviated from their apparent programming. Extraterrestrial scouts were learning something unexpected about humanity, something that might be the key to Earth's survival. As Rebecca compiled her findings into a presentation that would soon reach the highest levels of government, she had no idea that she was about to become the most important 12-year-old. In human history, the adults had tried to fight. They had failed. Now, it was time for the children to save the world. The child prodigy's plan, Rebecca. Foster's bedroom had transformed into something resembling a miniature version of NASA's mission control. 3 laptops hummed simultaneously while printouts covered every available surface. Mathematical equations sprawled across her bedroom walls and colored markers, creating patterns that would have impressed university professors. The 12-year-old genius hadn't slept in 18 hours, surviving on orange juice and determination as she raced against time to decode the alien invasion strategy. Her breakthrough came at 3:47 a.m. when she noticed something extraordinary. In the data, every alien scout encounter followed a precise mathematical sequence, like a cosmic test with specific parameters. The Xanthari weren't just invading Earth, they were conducting the galaxy's most sophisticated intelligence assessment. "Mom," Rebecca called out, her voice cracking with exhaustion and excitement. "I need to talk to the president." Her parents, David and Linda Foster, were huddled around their television with millions of other families. Watching news reports of children around the world engaging in increasingly impossible interactions with alien technology, the footage showed things that defied every law of physics and common sense. In Mumbai, 9-year-old Priya Sharma had somehow taught an alien scout to dance, and the 7-foot extraterrestrial was now performing what appeared to be a fusion of cosmic warrior movements and Bollywood choreography. In snow polo, 6-year-old Carlos Rodriguez had convinced 3 aliens to help him build the world's most advanced sandcastle, complete with towers that seemed to defy gravity and glow with soft blue light. But the most remarkable report came from Sydney, where 11-year-old Isabella Chang had engaged a Zenthari, as commander in what could only be described as philosophical debate about the nature of friendship. The alien, whose species had never encountered the concept of voluntary emotional bonds between unrelated individuals, was now experiencing what human psychologists would recognize as confusion about its own belief systems. Rebecca, honey. Her mother Linda called up the stairs. It's nearly 4 in the morning. You need to sleep. I can't sleep. Rebecca bounded down the stairs, clutching a thick folder of printed data. I figured it out. The aliens aren't trying to conquer us. They're trying to understand us. Her father David, a software engineer, looked at his daughter's wild hair and intense expression with growing concern. Sweetheart, you've been working too hard. Maybe we should, Dad, look at this. Rebecca spread her charts across the dining room table.
And with every alien encounter
Follows a specific pattern. They're testing human responses to determine our classification as a species. But children are giving them answers that don't fit any category in their database. Linda Foster sat down beside her daughter, maternal instinct warring with growing amazement at the complexity of Rebecca's analysis. What do you mean classification? Rebecca's eyes blazed with the fire of discovery. The Zenthari Empire has conquered thousands of worlds, right? They must have a system for categorizing species. Aggressive civilizations get destroyed. Passive ones get enslaved. Useful ones get absorbed into their empire. She pulled up a hand-drawn chart that would have impressed professional xenobiologists. But children are responding in ways that don't fit any of those categories. We're not aggressive like trained soldiers. We're not passive like frightened civilians. We're something completely new. David Foster stared at his daughter's work, recognizing the kind of analytical thinking that had made him successful in Silicon Valley. Oh, but Rebecca's mind was operating on a level that surpassed anything he had ever seen. The alien's technology is designed to interface with mature neural patterns, Rebecca continued, her words tumbling out in rapid-fire excitement. Adult brains operate on predictable frequencies. Children's developing minds create interference, patterns that disrupt their systems. The implications hit both parents simultaneously. Their 12-year-old daughter had just explained why the world's most advanced military forces were helpless while elementary school students were achieving impossible victories. We need to get this information to someone in authority, Linda said, reaching for her phone. Already tried, Rebecca sighed. I sent emails to the Pentagon, the White House, NASA, and the United Nations. But adults don't believe kids, especially during a crisis. That's when 10-year-old Tommy Chen knocked on their front door. Tommy was Maya's older brother, and he had inherited the same fearless curiosity that had made his sister the first human to make contact with alien scouts. But Tommy possessed something additional, a natural gift for leadership that had made him student council president despite his young age. Rebecca, Tommy called through the door. I know you've been working on the alien problem. We need your help. Behind Tommy stood an impossible gathering. Children from across Denver had somehow found each other and organized themselves into what could only be described as humanity's youngest think tank. 10-year-old Maria Gonzalez carried a notebook filled with sketches of alien technology. 9-year-old Kevin Patel held a tablet displaying programming code that seemed to interface with extraterrestrial systems. Most remarkably, 7-year-old Sophie Kim was accompanied by 2 Zenthari scouts who followed her like confused but benevolent bodyguards. How did you, Rebecca began? Social media, Tommy grinned. Turns out, kids are better at networking than adults realized. We've been sharing information about alien encounters through gaming platforms and school messaging systems. Sophie stepped forward, her small hand reaching up to take Rebecca's. The tall blue friends are scared, she said with the matter-of-fact tone that only children can achieve when discussing impossible situations. They don't understand why their machines don't work around us. One of the Zenthari scouts, its crystalline voice somehow translated into perfect English, spoke directly to Rebecca. Young human analyst, your species presents unprecedented variables. Our conquest protocols require modification of approach. Rebecca felt her heart racing as she realized she was face to face with representatives of the most advanced civilization in known space. But instead of fear, she felt the familiar excitement of encountering a puzzle that needed solving. What happens if you can't classify us? She asked. The alien scout's response chilled every adult present but filled the children with determination. Species that cannot be classified are either eliminated as potential threats or preserved as unique specimens for extended study. Tommy stepped forward with the confidence of someone who had never learned that. 10-year-olds weren't supposed to negotiate with intergalactic empires. What if we classify ourselves? The Zenthari scout's optical sensors flickered in what might have been confusion. Clarification required. Rebecca's mind raced as she saw the solution forming. They need to understand humans to complete their assessment. But they're only analyzing adult responses. Children are anomalies in their data. She looked around at the gathered kids, seeing not just playmates and classmates, but the key to Earth's survival. What if we show them that children aren't just incomplete adults? What if we prove that human childhood represents something that doesn't exist anywhere else in the galaxy? Maria Gonzalez looked up from her sketches. You mean show them that being a kid is actually our superpower? Exactly. Rebecca's voice carried the excitement of breakthrough discovery. We need to demonstrate that human development creates capabilities that fully mature species don't possess. The Zenthari scout processed this information with visible difficulty. Impossible. Juvenile specimens lack development necessary for advanced cognitive function. Sophie Kim giggled and patted the alien's armored leg. You don't understand playing. Do you? The simple question struck the Zenthari like a physical blow. In their millions of years of civilization, they had never encountered a species where the juvenile phase involved voluntary engagement in non-survival-oriented activities. Rebecca saw the moment when Earth's fate shifted. The aliens weren't just studying human military capabilities or technological development. They were trying to understand something that had never existed in their galaxy-spanning experience. The concept of childhood itself. We need to organize every kid on Earth, Rebecca announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had just realized she held the key to humanity's survival. Not to fight the aliens, but to teach them. Tommy nodded, understanding immediately. Operation Playground. Operation Playground, Rebecca confirmed. The most important lesson in human history was about to begin, taught by teachers who still lost teeth and believed in magic. Small Hands Big Victory Operation Playground began at exactly 12 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, when every child on Earth who had access to communication technology received the same message. Time to show the galaxy how to play. Rebecca Foster stood in the center of Denver's largest park, surrounded by hundreds of children and dozens of confused Zenthari scouts. In her hands, she held not weapons or advanced technology, but a simple red balloon and a piece of chalk. Across the globe, similar scenes were unfolding as humanity's youngest generation prepared to demonstrate something that had never been witnessed. In the galaxy's long history of conquest, the aliens' main invasion fleet hung in Earth's orbit. Massive ships, each the size of Manhattan, their weapons capable of sterilizing entire continents. Fleet Commander Zarthik had conquered 47 worlds, and his tactical computers had analyzed every possible human military response, but nothing in their vast database had prepared them for what happened next. In London, a tear-old Amelia Thompson began teaching a group of Zenthari warriors how to play Ring Around the Rosie, the ancient children's game, with its simple melody and coordinated movement, created harmonic frequencies that interfaced directly with alien neural implants. For the first time in their species' history, the Zenthari experienced something humans called joy. The effect was immediate and devastating to their military precision. Warriors who had marched in perfect formation for centuries suddenly found themselves laughing as they stumbled and fell during the game's climactic ending. Their advanced tactical systems couldn't process the concept of deliberate, harmless failure performed for entertainment. In Tokyo, 7-year-old Hiroshi Tanaka had organized the world's largest game of hide-and-seek, involving over 3,000 children and 200 increasingly bewildered alien scouts. The Zen 3's sophisticated sensor systems could track a single grain of sand across light years, but they couldn't comprehend why human juveniles deliberately conceal themselves without strategic purpose. When little Yuki Sato, age 5, burst out from behind a tree shouting, "Found you!" At a towering alien commander, the extraterrestrial being experienced what could only be described as existential confusion. The concept of seeking something you wanted to find, rather than hunting something you wanted to destroy, broke fundamental assumptions about predator-prey, relationships that had guided their species for millennia. But the most profound transformation occurred in Sao Paulo, where 6-year-old Carlos Rodriguez had convinced an entire Zenthari battle unit to help him build sandcastles. The aliens, whose technology could reshape matter at the molecular level, found themselves carefully crafting tiny towers and moats with the focused intensity of master architects taught Commander Veltara. A veteran of countless planetary sieges knelt in the sand beside Carlos, her massive armored hands delicately placing seashells around a miniature castle wall. For the first time since her military conditioning began, she wasn't thinking about conquest or strategy. She was thinking about making something beautiful. "Why do you create structures with no defensive value?" she asked Carlos in her crystalline voice. The 6-year-old looked up at her with the patience of someone explaining obvious facts to a confused adult. "Because it's fun, and because tomorrow we can build a different one." The alien commander's tactical processors struggled to analyze this statement. Creating temporary structures for emotional satisfaction rather than strategic advantage violated every principle of resource management her species had developed. Back in Denver, Rebecca Foster was conducting the galaxy's first lesson in advanced playground physics, using nothing but a jump rope, a handful of marbles, and pure human ingenuity. She was demonstrating principles of momentum and energy transfer that the Zenthari had never observed in juvenile behavior. "Watch this," Rebecca called to the assembled alien scouts. She began turning the jump rope while simultaneously explaining the mathematical principles behind the motion. "The rope creates predictable wave patterns, but when Tommy jumps in, his timing introduces variables that change the entire system." 10-year-old Tommy Chen leaped into the spinning rope with perfect precision, his movements creating what physicists would recognize as a complex interaction between multiple oscillating systems. But to the children, it was just a game. The Zenthari scouts' analytical systems went into overdrive trying to process what they were witnessing. Human juveniles were demonstrating mastery of advanced physics concepts through play activities that served no apparent survival function in their vast database of conquered species. They had never encountered beings who developed complex skills through voluntary recreational activities. 9-year-old Maya Chen, the girl who had first discovered the alien scouts, approached the tallest Zenthari commander with a flower crown made of dandelions. Without fear or hesitation, she placed it on the alien's massive head. "There," she announced with satisfaction. "Now you look friendly." Commander Vextel, who had personally overseen the destruction of entire civilizations, stood frozen as a circle of yellow flowers adorned his battle-scarred helmet. The crown served no tactical purpose, provided no defensive advantage. And yet something deep in his alien consciousness recognized it as significant. For the first time in his long military career, he felt what humans would call honored. The breakthrough moment came when 12-year-old Kevin Patel demonstrated something that changed everything. Using his tablet, he had created a simple drawing program that allowed the alien scouts to express themselves through digital art. The results were extraordinary. Beings who had been conditioned for warfare since birth began creating images of beauty, wonder, and imagination. Their drawings showed not conquered worlds or military victories, but curious interpretations of flowers, animals, human faces rendered in alien aesthetic sensibilities. Fleet Commander Zarthik, monitoring the situation from his flagship, watched in growing amazement as his most elite warriors abandoned their posts to finger paint with human children. His invasion protocols had no classification for this scenario. Status report, he demanded from his tactical officer. Sir, our ground forces have become ... compromised. They are engaging in non-combat activities with human juveniles. Is ... improving, sir? Zarthik's compound eyes focused on the tactical display. Improving? Explain. They report experiencing positive emotional states previously unknown to our species. Combat efficiency has decreased by 97%, but psychological wellness indicators are reaching unprecedented levels. In all his centuries of military command, Zarthik had never received a report about his troops becoming happier during an invasion. Down on Earth's surface, the impossible was becoming routine. Children were teaching aliens how to play tag, jump, rope, and hopscotch. They were sharing snacks and showing them how to blow bubbles. They were demonstrating that competition could exist without destruction, that rules could be followed voluntarily, and that losing could be as enjoyable as winning. But most importantly, they were proving that childhood wasn't just a biological phase of development. It was humanity's secret superpower. Sophie Kim, the 7-year-old who had befriended the first alien scouts, made the final, crucial discovery. She approached Rebecca with an expression of pure wonder. The tall, blue friends don't know how to imagine things that aren't real, she whispered. They can only think about things that already exist. Rebecca felt her heart stop as she understood the full implications. You mean they can't dream? Sophie nodded solemnly. They don't know about dragons or unicorns or magic castles in the clouds. The Zenthari Empire, with all their advanced technology and galactic dominance, had never developed imagination. They could process information, manipulate matter, and conquer worlds, but they couldn't envision possibilities that didn't already exist. Human children, on the other hand, lived in a constant state of creative possibility where anything could happen, and usually did. Rebecca looked around at the park filled with playing children and confused aliens, and realized that Earth's salvation lay not in humanity's weapons or technology, but in something far more powerful: the ability to imagine a better future and then make it real through play. Operation Playground was succeeding beyond their wildest dreams, but the most important lesson was yet to come. Earth's new dawn 6 months after Operation Playground changed the course of galactic history. Maya Chen sat in her backyard teaching Commander Vextal how to plant tomatoes, the massive alien warrior whose species had never encountered the concept of nurturing life for non-survival purposes. Carefully placed tiny seeds in the earth with the concentrated intensity he had once reserved for military campaigns. Remember, Maya instructed with the patient authority of an 8-year-old garden? Expert, you have to talk to them nicely so they know you want them to grow. Commander Vextel, who had conquered solar systems, found himself whispering encouragement to vegetable seeds. His fellow Zenthari warriors, monitoring from their orbiting ships, had initially classified this behavior as evidence of psychological compromise. Now they were requesting their own garden assignments. The transformation had begun small, but spread like wildfire through the Zenthari Empire. What humans called play had become the galaxy's most powerful force for change. Fleet Commander Zarthik stood on the observation deck of his flagship, no longer planning invasion strategies, but watching Earth's children teach his crew how to fly kites. The simple activity, which served no tactical purpose whatsoever, had somehow become the most popular pastime among his battle-hardened warriors. Sir, his tactical officer reported, we've received communication from the Zenthari High Command. They're requesting immediate status reports on our ... educational activities. Zarthik smiled, an expression his species had learned from human children along with 17 other emotional responses they had never possessed. Tell them we've discovered something more valuable than conquered worlds, Lieutenant. We've discovered how to be happy. The ripple effects were transforming the galaxy in ways no one had anticipated. Rebecca Foster, now 13 and recognized as Earth's youngest diplomatic advisor, reviewed reports from across Zenthari space. On the industrial world of Kepler 442, alien workers had spontaneously organized what humans would recognize as recess breaks, leading to increased productivity and decreased workplace conflicts. On the military fortress of Proxima Station, Zenthari, commanders had begun incorporating team-building games into training exercises, resulting in unprecedented cooperation between different warrior castes. Most remarkably, on the capital world of Zenthos Prime, the Empire's ruling council had established their first-ever department of creative imagination, staffed by former military strategists who now spent their days inventing stories about worlds that didn't exist. Tommy Chen, now 11 and serving as Earth's ambassador to young humans everywhere, had become something of a legend among alien species. His natural leadership abilities had evolved into a gift for interspecies diplomacy that impressed even seasoned adult negotiators. The key, Tommy explained to a gathering of Zenthari educators, is understanding that humans don't stop being curious when we grow up. We just get better at asking questions. The aliens had initially struggled to comprehend adult humans, whose complex behaviors seemed to contradict everything they had learned from children. But gradually they began to recognize that human adults were simply children who had developed more sophisticated ways of playing and learning. Dr. Alina Vasquez, the xenobiology expert who had first analyzed the alien encounters, now found herself studying something far more fascinating than extraterrestrial physiology. She was documenting the first recorded case of an entire civilization learning how to evolve beyond its biological limitations. The Zenthari are experiencing what we might call cultural metamorphosis, she explained to the United Nations General Assembly. They're developing capabilities that their species never possessed: creativity, empathy, and the ability to imagine better futures. The changes weren't limited to the Zenthari Empire. News of Earth's victory through friendship had spread across the galaxy, reaching civilizations that had been conquered centuries earlier. Reports flooded in of former Zenthari subjects, rediscovering art, music, and play activities that had been suppressed under military rule. On distant worlds, beings were teaching their children games that had been forbidden for generations. Ancient songs were being sung again. Colors were returning to societies that had been forced into military uniformity. But perhaps the most profound change occurred in the heart of the Zenthari Empire itself. Empress Zarathal, ruler of 1,000 worlds and supreme commander of the galaxy's most feared military force, sat in her throne room playing chess with Sophie Kim via holographic communication. The 7-year-old Earth child had become the Empress's closest advisor, teaching her concepts that millennia of conquest had never provided. "Your Majesty," Sophie said with the casual formality that only children can achieve, "you moved your horsey wrong again." Knights go in L-shapes, remember? The Empress, whose word had once meant life or death for billions of beings, carefully moved her piece back to its original position. "Thank you for your patience, young teacher. In our language, we have no word for games where both players can learn from mistakes." "That's silly," Sophie replied with characteristic directness. "The best part of games is when you mess up because then you figure out how to do better next time." This simple observation had revolutionized Zenthari philosophy. The concept of beneficial failure, where mistakes became opportunities for growth rather than reasons for punishment, was transforming their entire approach to education, governance, and military strategy. A year after first contact, Earth hosted the galaxy's first interspecies playground festival. Children from dozens of worlds gathered to share games, stories, and snacks with beings they would have run from in terror just months earlier. Maria Gonzalez, now 9, had become the festival's head art director, organizing collaborative murals, where human children worked alongside young Zenthari to create beautiful impossibilities that neither species could have imagined alone. Kevin Patel had developed translation software that allowed different species to share games across language barriers, leading to fusion activities that combined the best elements of multiple civilizations' play traditions. But the most moving moment came when Hiroshi Tanaka, now 8, presented the Zenthari Empire with humanity's greatest gift, the first children's book written specifically for alien readers. The story, titled "The Little Star Who Learned to Laugh," told told of a lonely celestial body who discovered joy by making friends with passing comets. It was simple, innocent, completely revolutionary for beings who had never encountered fiction designed to inspire rather than instruct. Empress. Zerothil wept as she listened to the story, experiencing an emotional response her species had. Thought biologically impossible? The concept of creating narratives purely to bring happiness to others challenged everything the Zenthari had believed about the purpose of communication. Why do humans create stories that are not true? She asked. Rebecca, during one of their regular diplomatic meetings, Rebecca, now 14 and wiser than many adults twice her age, smiled. Because sometimes the most important truths can only be understood through imagination. The transformation reached its culmination when the Zenthari Empire officially disbanded its military conquest division and established the Department of Galactic Friendship. Former warriors became explorers, seeking not worlds to conquer, but civilizations to learn from and play with. Commander Vextel, the alien who had first encountered Maya Chen, was appointed as the department's first director. His mission: to spread the revolutionary concepts of childhood, play, and imagination throughout the galaxy. Standing in the same playground where everything began, Chen watched her tomato plants growing under alien sun lamps, while Commander Vextel read her a bedtime story about brave little astronauts who saved the universe through kindness. Do you miss being scary? Maya asked her unlikely friend. The former Conquest commander considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. I thought being feared made me powerful, he replied, but being loved makes me happy. And happiness, I have learned, is a much better kind of strength. As the sun set over Earth, millions of children across the galaxy were being tucked into bed by beings who had learned that the greatest victory wasn't conquest, but connection. The day Earth's weakest became its greatest heroes had ended, but the age of galactic childhood had just begun, in playgrounds across 1,000 worlds. The sound of laughter echoed through the cosmos, and the universe discovered that the most powerful force in existence wasn't technology or military might. It was the simple, revolutionary act of children teaching adults how to dream. The Zenthari had come to conquer Earth and instead learned the greatest lesson in galactic history, that growing up doesn't mean giving up wonder, and that the strongest civilizations are built not on fear, but on the courage to remain curious about tomorrow. And in a small backyard in Denver, an 8-year-old girl and an alien warrior watered tomato plants together, proving that friendship really could bloom anywhere in the universe.